My threshold for sleep deprivation was much shorter than other families who may have other plans, right? Maybe you're choosing to co-sleep. Maybe that's part of your postpartum plan. Maybe you love it until your 2-year-old is, all over the place of laying on top of your head, or you're potty training and you've got a 3-year-old potty training in the bed and they're wet in the family bed, right? Maybe the sleep isn't sustainable then. Then you call me.
Welcome to Imperfect Momming. Our children are constantly looking to us for examples. The term role model doesn't quite cut it here. We are shaping their worldview with every move we make. You see, it's not in the lectures we give or moments where we're actively attempting to teach them. It's in the micro movements we make, the unconscious ways in which we navigate life. We are constantly teaching our children how to show up for themselves, their friends, their future partners, and even their future children. So what can we do to ensure we are raising thoughtful, compassionate, self-aware human beings? We have to become them ourselves. No one is perfect, but we can all still be better, and it starts with self-healing. Let's get to it. Welcome back to Imperfect Momming. I am your host, Alicia Lyons, and we have a very special guest today, Sarah Bossio. Welcome to Imperfect Momming.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us who you are and what you do.
So I am a certified pediatric sleep consultant. So that means that if you are a tired family, I am here to help you. Children ages 0 all the way up to 8 years old. So it is never too late to get your child's sleep on track. And that's been it's my business now, but it was my passion project that turned into something bigger that ended up helping support over 500 families at this point.
So tell me about that. Like where did the passion project come from?
Oh my gosh, such a good question. Like, speaking of imperfect mommying, do we say we're all imperfect, right? Like, there is no, yes, okay.
That's the reason for the podcast name, is like we're not, the goal isn't perfection. It's learning and through the mess.
Yes. So I've always been a lifelong learner. I was a teacher for 15 years before I left my teaching position to do this full time. And when I had my children, I thought, being very type A and being very lifelong learner-ish, I can learn all about whatever I need. I can just read my way through it. I can just absorb as much information as possible. And anybody who already has children probably is smiling and realizing, oh, okay, well, you realized you maybe couldn't do that because they're individuals, they're unique, right? And the biggest piece that was the hardest thing for me was their sleep. I couldn't figure out how to get them to sleep. And when I did eventually crack the code, I wasn't sleeping. So I ended up, I don't know if it was PTSD. I did have an official postpartum depression and anxiety diagnosis. So there was, a medical aspect to it. But the fear in the middle of the night of like, is this going to be it? Are they going to wake up again? And then I'm going to have to go back to the way things were. So I would stay up for days at a time and just panic all night. And then I'd be exhausted all day at school. And medication and therapy and sleep and confidence and just seeing, okay, they are sleeping. And I know, I've kind of figured this out right now was really helpful. Sleep changes and evolves. So my perfectly sleeping baby turned into an awful sleeping 2-year-old while I was pregnant with my second daughter. Just, on a search to find lots of resources, I felt that I ended up in a space where there's a lot of judgment, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt. With parents who were really looking for sleep. And not because I just wanted my kids to sleep, because it was really a huge piece of my mental health. I needed it for me to be able to show up every day as the best mom that I could be. So through that, I started helping other family and friends. It was just one of those like, hey, I know that you ended up sleep training your children, and how did that go? And can you help me with schedules, etc. My husband encouraged me to turn that into something that I could do on the side, like instead of like, let's see if you can do it on the side in addition to teaching. Like we'll make enough money to go to Disney World once a year. And that little dream, right? I was so passionate about it, and I realized how much I could help families and hold space for them. And it turned into a full-blown business, full-time, see you later teaching, and now this is what I do, which is so cool.
That is really cool. And I love hearing people's origin stories because it kind of lets you know like the mindset of where you were and what got you onto the path that you're on now, because usually there's some kind of turmoil that creates the passion for helping.
Yes, there always is. Have you ever read anything by Lissa Rankin? Have you ever heard of her? She wrote Mind Over Medicine. It's one of the questions I know we'll talk about is a book that was instrumental in this journey. And it's hard for me to pick, right? Like what
Right.
one, but I'm thinking, as you said, there's turmoil. Lissa Rankin gives it a term, and I'm forget like it's like her dark hole or her darkest moment or whatever it is that she uses through her book all the time, and that's where the growth is.
I call it the pit of despair.
Yes. Yeah, that's really like
Yeah.
you're there and there's nowhere else to go but up, and you have to change something.
Mhm.
And it's funny because the change in the sleep, and which then evolved into this healing journey and really matrescence, right? Like understanding what this new person was. I was a new person that was born to, not
Yeah.
just my children. Also led to me being in a very big pit of despair in the world of education, which I was not thrilled about. And they always, as the universe does, it fused together for me. And both of those ended up birthing my third baby, which is Your Zen Baby Sleep.
Oh. I mean, I know how important sleep is for me, and I'm very strict about my sleep schedule. Where I go to bed at 9. And I wake up at 5. I get my 8 hours of sleep. I and if I'm tired when 5 o'clock rolls around, I'll just turn it off. And I have a backup alarm of like I absolutely have to get up at 6:30 to get everything done that needs to get done before school starts. Um and so I'm very strict about it. And my son is now approaching 13. And so we're seeing, I know you said you're outside, you stop at the age 8, but we're seeing the teenage sleep changes. It's very interesting. Both my son and my husband are very, they struggle with their sleep. And my son didn't always. He was a really good sleeper. And I like my heart goes out to people that don't have that experience, because I know how important my sleep is. And I was always self-employed, or I was self-employed when he was born. So I think that was a huge factor. And he was such a good sleeper back in the day. Do you find your clients that are stay-at-home moms or work from home moms versus work out of the home moms, is there a correlation? Or is it just kind of the luck of the draw with the baby?
I really think it's the luck of the draw with the baby, really, because is there a different motivation to get the sleep in order depending on where you are on your path as a mom? Sure. But even for families, I'll have a lot of families call me while they're still on maternity leave, and they'll say, I'm on maternity leave, so, I can do all of the nights, or, I don't mind not napping during the day. And I really want these moms and dads, I'm a lot more dads on paternity leave now. That's becoming more and more prevalent as I'm meeting with families within the last year. And I say to them, but it doesn't, you're on 24 hours a day. I don't care what you're doing. It doesn't mean just because I'm off of work, or I'm the parent who stays home with the kids, or I have a really intense corporate job and my spouse decides to, carry the load of the child rearing. You don't need to sacrifice that. None of that is a prerequisite for you need to experience sleep deprivation, period. So I think maybe people feel, I don't know, is it from society or just, gender norms that, oh, if I'm the person home or if I have a flexible self-employed job, that I should be able to take the brunt of sleep deprivation. Actually, if you're the one who's depending on yourself to make your money, you you need sleep more than ever because entrepreneurship is harder than, working for an employer sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I always say as an entrepreneur that like the job is never done. Like you don't, and especially entrepreneurial moms feel guilty when they're working and they feel guilty when they're not. Because thank you, social programming or whatever it is. Yeah, I do. I think that one of the big problems in motherhood is like, okay, I'm the primary parent, the primary caregiver, and therefore, it's okay. I can do all of the things. I don't need the help. Like my partner is doing all the other things, so they need to do that. And it's like the reality is that we need this balance and harmony. And my son's dad he just really stepped into that role. And I think part of it is because he really wanted to spend time with our son. He had an older son that he didn't get that time with as much. He felt a really strong connection to our son from the get-go, which I am grateful for because he was also the night owl. So he would come home at 10 or 11 or 12, depending on what time his shift was over. And if our son would wake up in the middle of the night, he would take care of him. He would do everything but the feeding while I was breastfeeding. And then once when we switched to bottle feeding, he did all of it. And I never had to wake up except for the feeding part. So it's like, and again, like this is just this magical situation that kind of happened that I lucked into, as with the lucky sleep schedule. So I try not to talk about that very much so people don't hate me silently.
No, but it's so, you know what, it's okay to know. I even see a shift. I've been doing this for over 3 years now, maybe 4 years, I forget. And I do see a shift again in the last year, probably correlated to paternity leave. Maybe because dads realize on paternity leave how challenging it is to be home with a newborn who needs you 24/7. And I really do see a lot more dads stepping up and taking the brunt or equal load, or, just finding more of a balance than maybe dads were aware of 3 years ago. And no shade to the dads 3 years ago. I don't think it was an opportunity that was available to them, what the opportunity wasn't available to my husband. I was the one doing the night feeds alone. So that was, again, another trigger of what facilitated this whole dive down into the pit of despair. But what I'm happy about is, my oldest is 8.5, and I've seen such a positive shift. That's a long period of time, but really short if you think about, how things have shifted from my husband didn't get any paternity leave. She was born on a Friday. He went to work on Monday. And by the time our second was born 3 years later, he was offered 4 weeks. And now I don't, I'm not sure what the company would offer because we are done, but I'm sure it's more. I just keep hearing that more dads are home more often to help to make sure that moms are getting sleep and support and care and all of that.
I know that there's other countries that give a year of maternity leave. And I know that they also get paternity leave in addition to the mothers getting the year off. And I'm just like, let's step it up, United States. Like we're supposed to be the best country in the world. So let's start acting like it and let people take care of their babies.
I worked with a family in Sweden a few years back, And the mom was lovely. It was so wonderful talking to her, and even modifying the plan to the way that other countries value sleep. So for example, in Sweden, 1 nap a day, culturally you take outside, like you leave your babies at a cafe outside in a carriage, everybody lines them up and you go and have a cup of coffee. So she was like, I know I'm supposed to put the baby in a dark room with white noise, but can we incorporate this into the plan, because this is what we do here? Yeah, of course we can do that. But anyways, in our conversation, she was blown away every time we would talk about maternity and paternity leave. So she had a whole year, then her husband had the next year, and then at the end of the 2 years combined, they both were given 360 days in the next 3 years until her son was in kindergarten to be able to use for sick days or time off for childcare, 360 days over the course of 3 years.
Wow.
So they could take a combined, 6 months each, basically, which again, like I was thinking back to at the time I was still teaching, and I had to lie to my employer anytime my kid was sick, because we weren't allowed to call out sick for our kids. That was, we would get docked if we called out sick and said it was because of our kids. So yes.
Like my mom was a teacher. The only reason she ever had used her sick leave was because the kids were sick. Like she never took it for herself.
What parents do take sick time for themselves? It's because your kids, at least in the beginning when they're in daycare and they're sick all the time, which is, so yes, we are way behind the ball here. In terms of support for postpartum care for both mom and dad.
So what are some, what would be a reason for a parent to reach out to you?
So I always say that, I do work with a wide age range of children, and this is kind of coupled with like, when is the best age to sleep train? I really think that you reach out to somebody for help when your situation isn't sustainable anymore. So the tenets, the foundation of my practice are that your kid is brilliant. I don't know them, and I know they're brilliant. I've taught many, many, many children throughout the years, and I have yet to teach a kid who doesn't eventually pick up what we're putting down with the right modifications and personalization and adjustment. So if your sleep situation isn't sustainable anymore at 4 months, and you're saying to yourself, I do not know how I'm going to make it through the next month like this. Like if I'm still sleeping like this in a month from now, somebody's going to have to admit me somewhere. That could happen for some moms at 4 months. That's what happened to me at 4 months, right? Like my threshold for sleep deprivation was much shorter than other families who may have other plans, right? Maybe you're choosing to co-sleep. Maybe that's part of your postpartum plan. Maybe you love it until your 2-year-old is, all over the place of laying on top of your head, or you're potty training and you've got a 3-year-old potty training in the bed and they're wet in the family bed, right? Maybe the sleep isn't sustainable then you call me. So it doesn't have to be like I've seen a lot of parents do a mindset shift of like, I really loved our sleep situation, which didn't really align with sleep training in the beginning or for months or for years. And now I want them to sleep. So can you help me teach them? Right. And then I've seen families who are like, I knew the second day came out, I wanted to get on a schedule and I was going to do this the moment I could. And then you come to me. So it's so different for everybody, right? So different for every family. So if you are picturing your sleep situation and I say, can you do this in four more weeks? Like, can you sustain this for 4 more weeks? And your answer is no, that's when you would reach out for help.
I have a girlfriend who was telling me the other day that I think her son might be 7. And I think they still co-sleep. All husband, mom, dad, mom, kid. And the funny part was that her husband had a pillow to protect his privates because their kid was a flailer. So they had this pillow. And I think it's beautiful that every family is different. And there's someone in my family who her postpartum anxiety showed up in the sleep routine. And so she was she went down the rabbit hole of Google and was very strict about when her son would go to sleep. And it wasn't until a while later that she realized that it was postpartum anxiety that was creating that situation. And so I think she has 4 kids now, but with each kid, she was a little less strict about it, a little more flexible. But I just remember before I knew that it was, before I was doing any of this work, number one, but also before I was, knew that it was postpartum anxiety, I was just like, this is so different from the way that I had my son. My son is, probably 7 years older than hers. But I took him, he was with me everywhere because I had a work from home business, and I would go to an office to see clients. I had probably 50 people holding my son the first 6 weeks of his life, or 6 months of his life, so maybe more. That seems low now. Maybe the first 6 weeks of his life with the 50 people. But, it was, and this kid is not shy. He has a really strong, healthy immune system. Like, and he sleeps like a champ until recently. But
yes. Yep. I think it's so important what you say though. So that when I'm thinking of those terms, right? Like flexibility or strict schedule or like go with the flow, or right? The other thing to think about when you're working with any professional one-on-one is you can incorporate those things into your program if you're working one-on-one, right? So there's a plethora of wonderful, wonderful resources out there on sleep, and they're very great and can help families who maybe have like just I don't know, like I'm thinking generic kid. No kid is generic, but
right.
Who have kids who are just easygoing, go with the flow, and parents who are more easygoing, go with the flow. There's programs that serve that you don't need to have that one-on-one aspect. But if the schedule is making you nutty and you realize I can't do this for my own mental health, but I still value sleep, work with somebody individually, because they should be like, I would be able to say, yeah, these are the times where we're not going to worry about the schedule. This is how we can create flexibility so that how to, have a balance of both.
Mm-hmm.
You are, you have to go into an office every day and you don't have childcare. This is what we're going to do with your baby, right? So that would be another reason that if you're kind of searching and realize like, but this doesn't really fit the mold of what I'm looking for, a professional who can work individually with you is going to be helpful for that.
Yeah, individualized support is so important when, there's a lot of group programs out there. And, I'm currently in the middle of a 3-day fast, and it's a group program. Yes, I'm on day 2.
How are you doing it? Is it like with juices, or are you just fasting
No,
completely?
just water. It's a water fast. So I would just finish my tea, but I'm doing okay. I'm just reminding myself that it's 3 days goes by like that when you're not thinking about it. She's this person that's leading this 3-day fast. She's talking about this individualized support, and if you have this, then you should do this. And I'm like, oh, I don't have that individualized support. I'm flying blind with this 3-day fast, and I'm trying to pick out the places where I fit into this general population. And it's fine for a 3-day fast, but when you're struggling with a sleep routine, and this is your kid and your family, having that individualized support is just gold.
So helpful.
Yeah.
So
Is there a piece of advice that you want to share with moms listening?
the biggest piece of advice for me is that my children, your children, are your best teachers for sure in this lifetime. So if you allow them to be, right? Sounds a little paradoxical because we're supposed to be teaching them. We're supposed to be helping them grow and develop. But if you listen and you stop and you take a minute, you can learn so much from them about yourself. And they can help be the precipitator to a healing journey for whatever you need to heal. You know, motherhood can be a really big healing journey, so that you can do better for your kids. So I will always say that I have my favorite teachers in my life. You know, I can give shout outs to them, but my best teachers are my two girls.
Yeah. I think I had a guest one time that, or maybe it was, I don't remember who it was now, but she had said to me, like, I want to do all of my healing before I have kids. And I was like, that is a great plan. And it's not going to work because
Yes.
the second that you become a mom, all of your mom files get opened up. And now you've got all kinds of new healing, and your kids will trigger you like nobody else. Because they're supposed to. They're supposed to be your greatest teachers. Like, that's part of the process, I think.
It's so true. And so coming into that, thankfully, I'm so thankful that I was able to accept that and understand that knowledge early on. Because if I had to go years and years without knowing that, I think it would have made my job, I don't know if it would have made it harder, but maybe just I would be less able to ground in moments of frustration and the challenges that come every day, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there, so you mentioned a book. Do you want to mention another book, or?
Okay, yeah. So the book that I actually wrote down was Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. He briefly, he is a psychologist or a psychiatrist who put people under hypnosis to help them with lives between lives readings, so they could understand what past lives were, what lessons the past lives had, and how it impacted the current life that they were in. And I was recommended this actually by one of my very good, all of my teacher friends in the school that I was in, we all became Reiki certified. We were all like, so one of my, so it was very spiritual group of professionals who I was working with. So one of them, who was a Reiki master, had recommended this maybe before I was pregnant or just in my postpartum journey. And that's what clicked. It kind of got me very interested in the woo and the spiritual and what this journey could mean for me and what lessons my girls were bringing here for me and what I was here to learn and heal and all of that. So that was kind of the beginning. And then I'm looking through I Audible. I don't read. I Audible. The reading, I'm just going to either pass out or get distracted. So I Audible when I'm Uber driving my children everywhere. And the list from there, it's like lists and lists of books that are very similar. But highly recommend if you are interested in getting started in the woo and like the very cool spiritual world that exists out there.
Awesome. I will definitely check that out. I'm a certified Reiki master as well. So I'm definitely into the woo. We'll talk offline about how that all came about. Where can our listeners find you?
Our listeners can find me at my website, yourzenbabysleep.com. On Instagram, my handle is at Your Zen Baby Sleep. And I also have a YouTube channel. So if you're looking for resources just to get an understanding of how I work, helpful sleep topics, you can find me on YouTube. Same thing, Your Zen Baby Sleep.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time and your passion and your energy in this call, and what you're doing in the world, helping mamas, helping daddies get their sleep and be more balanced.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you and for holding the space. for everyone, all of your listeners.
Absolutely. So we'll have another episode of Imperfect Momming for you all coming next week. And until we meet again, keep healing. Bye, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Imperfect Momming. It's time for us to step up and realize that our power is not in trying to shape our children. Our power lies in shaping ourselves into the people we want our children to model themselves after. Don't just do it for your kids. Do it for yourself. When you become a more self-aware, compassionate, and confident person, you and everyone around you benefit. For more information about me and my work, visit AliciaLyons.com. That's ALYSIALYONS.com. And until we meet again, keep healing.